Hello everyone. So just continue from the previous video where we are continuing to discuss the components of a dissertation, and we stopped in the method section in the last part of the video. So we were discussing the subsections of the method or methodology. So as we mentioned before, we need to discuss the whole process that we followed. And one part of the process is also the data sources, where we get the data from, where we collected the data, and it depends whether we use the primary data or secondary data. So primary data means the data that is not available. We are going to the field and collect the opinion or yeah, get the data from the field that's not available. That is the raw data. So we can go and talk with people, interview people, we can observe people, we can make some questions based on the literature or any frameworks, and then we can conduct a survey, questionnaire surveys, or it can be a scaling to get the opinion of the people, open-ended questionnaire or the closed-ended questionnaire. It can be written, it can be oral, so we can collect from data from the field and use those data for most for our study. It can be qualitative, it can be quantitative, but interviews mostly is for qualitative study. But questionnaire, if it is kind of closed-ended question, it is used for quantitative study mostly. Secondary data means the data or the documents that already published, or the data that's already available in different sources. So we just collect the data and use those for our study. It can be published report, it can be published research paper, or it most importantly, the data, secondary data, is collected from the databases. So there are many databases, but it should be subscribed by the university, or it can be subscribed personally. It is very expensive, obviously, I should say. So we can collect data from Bloomberg or Refinitiv or Fame, Amadeus or Orbis. There are many sources of data where we can collect the data on different variables on the market, on the stock market, or on different issues of the corporations or the companies. So the data are available. We just need to take them, download them, and then we should refine or organize them according to the research design, uh, that we the research question that we want to answer, and then we can analyze, put it into the statistical tools for analysis. So what are the statistical tools that we can use? As in case of qualitative, there are the research tools is very important. If we analyze the data manually, we cannot do it faster as it is possible by the machine or the technology or the tools, and we cannot go as deeper as the machine can go. So it is better to use the tools, and these are very helpful in our research. So for qualitative, we can use NVivo, Quercos, or Atlas TI, Maxda, Covidence if we want to do literature review, and sometimes we can use the functionality of the Excel as well if you want to organize, analyze data. And there is very good tools to analyze the interview data or any published documents of the textual analysis we can do using NVivo. Yeah, coding is very easy, and find out the themes for our qualitative study. Quantitative study, many different statistical tools are used for analyzing the data, especially in this time we use larger volume of data for our study. Thousands of companies are companies data with many variables we try to study. So it is of using, and it is sometimes impossible to analyze those data without any statistical tool. So people are using machine learning, R, SAS, EVs, data, spaces, still using, though it is old, but still people are using. So yeah, structural equation modeling, For justifying those model design, we need to use these statistical tool. So after analyzing, after getting the data analyzed, we found our found the data, the results of our analysis. So, and then now we should present our findings and analyze those in our dissertation or in our paper. So how we can provide the findings in our dissertation. So this section is basically a data-driven and technical explanation of data, right? At the beginning of the finding section, we can provide the context of the data, where we collected the data, what about the data, who are the participants, so that the people can have an idea why the data is findings is something like this, or people can carefully use the findings in that particular considering the context of the data. And obviously, the data can be analyzed in many different ways. One data can be analyzed in many different ways. So it is pioneer. It is significant. It is most important that we use the data or analyze the data for answering the central research questions. That's very, very important. There may have different research questions, so we should answer that. To answer that question, what's the data, what's the analysis, what's the output we need? We should only focus on those. And most relevant information, most important, significant information can be provided in graph, can be provided in charts or in table. It's more legible, right? So people easily can see what's the picture, what's happening, why it is acting, or something like this. What's the finding? It is catchy, right? Than just narrating the information. And the data, the data itself can be presented. Most importantly, if it is a qualitative study, we provide the quotes, we provide the significant opinion in the paper itself, what this particular interview says in this context, right? We can provide those those comments in the paper itself, right? What are the paper we use? What are the document we analyzed? What's the background of the study, of the data? We can provide in tables as well if we need to. Most importantly, we need to clarify the unclear points, right? Make sure we explain the data, we explain the tables, we explain the findings clearly to the people. We discuss the effects, impact, right? Relationships, right? Of the data, of the variables more clearly, right? Some people provide the findings and analysis together. Some just provide the findings and then analyze, or discussions are provided as a separate section. So in that case, the discussions, the effect on different variables, relationship with the economic context, relationship with the policy, relationship with the context can be discussed in a separate section if it is big, right? More critical discussions. And also we can refer the findings to the literature, right? The literature that we used, okay? What the previous literature found in this particular context, right? Previous literature could say, oh, it is accepted, but we found the hypothesis is rejected. The previous literature says there is some relationship between these two variables, but we may found opposite or maybe similar. So we can refer back to the previous literature, what previous literature found in this kind of study, and what we found, and why it is different, right? Why it is different. We can explain, we can relate with different things. So there are some other components that I want to focus. And one of the important thing at the beginning, very beginning of the research paper or of the dissertation, we write an abstract. But remember, this is the thing, is the summary, very concise little summary of our whole work. Okay, so this is what we need to write at the very last time of our study, right? Because we need to know everything to write an abstract. But yes, there are some instances we write the abstract at the beginning, a tentative abstract. We write to say, for example, we need to submit a paper in a special issue or for a conference for funding. So we can provide a beginning, but for the study, for a research work, if we do a research and find the findings, which should be very last point to write. And the second thing, the second section is the introduction. And this is the second last point we should write. Okay, in the introduction, we should provide the rationale of the study, why we are studying this, what's the justification of this study. This is very important to provide at the very beginning of introduction. And we can provide a context, yeah, a paragraph or two. But if the context is big, right, particularly if it is dissertation, we should provide a context as a separate section. It can be in the paper as well. In case of, we should provide the research gap. What's the gap? What's the research question we are answering in this paper? Should be in the introduction. And we should include the contribution of the paper, contribution to literature, contribution to policy, contribution to theory. And also the last part of the introduction is guiding the reader regarding the remaining sections of the paper, right? What's the second section of the paper? What's the third section of the paper? What's the fourth section? What the reader is expecting after? We need to provide those in at the end of introduction. And then we put the literature review, and then we can use a theoretical framework. What is theoretical framework? So there is lots of theories, existing theories that we use. So what the theory provides? Theory provides us some help us to justify our findings, explain our findings, develop our arguments, why it is acting something like this, what are the things we need, social things or issues we need to consider to explain our findings. Okay, so theory actually explain the findings, draw the connections between the variables, right? The connections between the people and the government, or the people and the NGOs and the stakeholders, so how they act or react in different cases. There are many theories which explain this behavior, based on which we can explain our findings. And also it can give us some kind of justification, some help in case of predicting what may happen, what may be may occur in future, kind of predictions. And as I mentioned before, we need a separate section for separate section for discussion if we want to, or it may be just a conclusion. It's a summary, but it can be a critical discussions in the discussion area if we want to provide separate discussion after findings. And the conclusion section should include contribution, and it include limitations, what we couldn't do, and then provide the future directions, future study direction, what can be done in future, what we couldn't do, what we may explore further, what we can do in future, what other people can do, what future research can do. We did say theoretically, conceptually, future researcher can go and collect the information and collect and apply or use quantitative method to answer the research question more effectively if they want to. Or it has been done quantitatively. We can do it qualitative study, why it is something like this, happening something like this, more deeper analysis we can do. And obviously we have to follow the references, a referencing style provided by the university or the journal. There are many different referencing style, Harvard, APA, or journal specific format. Harvard can be of many journal modified, Harvard modified, APA are suggested by the journals or the conferences or whatever. So we need to justify our study based on reference, based on the existing work. So we should give reference if we use any concept, if we use any terms, if we use any quotations from any paper in the text, and also the detailed reference at the end of the study. Finally, we should provide appendix. Appendix is kind of an additional data, additional table. The table is not so significant, not so important to put in the main body, but it can be at the it can provided some kind of explanation and background to the readers. So we can add after at the end of the thesis or end of the work or the research paper. So now I would like to just mention some of the mistakes students make or the limitations of the students' work. So in some cases, student research doesn't include doesn't have significant research gap or no research gap is identified. The writing is very poor, organization is very poor. The research is not a systematic research. There is no critical discussions in the paper why this is happening, what is the relationship with the literature. Is not no critical discussion, no contribution at all. That study already been done, and we are doing the same thing again. And in some cases, they don't like to listen to the experts. Experts says you need to do this, you need to do more analysis, you need to collect more variables of this and that, but we ignore those. We shouldn't ignore. And if students publish their work, in most of the cases they go to the journal where it is easy to publish, but we shouldn't do that. This is sort of predatory journals. So people don't actually want to read or use those study. And most importantly, hard work. People don't like to do hard work. It's very, very important. We work hard to get the paper published in a very high quality journal. Thank you so much for watching. Hope it's helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.